What if Ned Stark refused the hand of the king and stayed in Winterfell? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Before we start, go ahead and click that like button. 2,500 likes gets everyone a part 2. The cold wind bites Ned Stark's face as he walks through the Winterfell courtyard. Despite that, he feels himself breaking into a cold sweat as he considers what he will say to King Robert. Most men would kill for such an honor, but how can he refuse him? Still, it cannot be helped, as Ned feels uncomfortable with the offer. With a deep breath, he heads into the Great Hall, where breakfast is being served. Robert beckons Ned over with a cup of black beer.
Just in time, Ned. I hope you come here with good news.
I'm afraid not. I'm sorry, Your Grace, but I do not think I can accept this offer.
You're refusing? Most men would kill for this honor. I've seen a few try.
Then perhaps if they're so interested in it, they might be better suited for it.
Robert stares, still trying to make sense of what he's hearing. Despite his efforts to convince Ned, the Great Lord holds his ground. He insists his duty is here in Winterfell, to his family, and cannot leave them. When he cannot convince Ned, Robert's initial anger is as fierce as a storm, his face flushed with a familiar heat of frustration. Throughout the meal, he roars, curses, flips over a plate, and then smashes a mug against the wall, all while saying that all of this coming here was for him. Ned weathers all this, and by the end, Robert is laughing and cursing Ned for never being able to stay mad at him. But though he cannot serve his hand, he does give him some advice.
I am no courier, but one of your brothers has been at court and sat in your council longer than me. Perhaps one of them might be better suited.
Pick one. The silk glove or the iron gauntlet. It may be the hardest decision of my rule. Damn you, Ned.
But in the end, they part on good terms, Robert clasping Ned's arm and calling him stubborn as ever. There are no hard feelings, Robert assures him, but asks Ned to visit him soon. Yet, even as the king departs, Ned cannot shake the sense that trouble lingers like a shadow. For the first few weeks after the king's departure, things seem to return to normal. Ned continues ruling Winterfell and finds no trouble in the north, save for Bran's fall, which leaves a dark shadow over his family. Despite that, everything seems quiet and leads Ned to believe that everything will be all right. But while his son lies unconscious, a fire breaks out in the library and Ned hurries to deal with it. By the time the flames are extinguished, he hears grim news. A cat's paw strikes in the dead of night, slipping into Bran's room to murder him. Ned emerges with a longsword in hand to find Catelyn with blood on her hands and Summer standing over the would-be assassin. As they look through his body, they find a dagger, Valyrian steel, and a dragon bone hilt. Ned studies the blade with a grim expression. It's no ordinary weapon. Someone in the south, someone of power, wanted Bran dead. The implications are staggering, and as he holds the dagger in his hands, his thoughts drift to Lysa Arryn's letter. Her warning about the Lannisters suddenly feels far less like paranoia and far more like a chilling reality. The next morning, Ned gathers his family and closest advisors in the Great Hall. He lays the dagger on the table before them. Beside him, Catelyn sits with her hands freshly bandaged.
This was meant for Bran.
Catelyn's face is pale, her hands clenched in her lap. Robb looks ready to explode with anger.
I cannot sit idly by while someone tries to murder my son. I will ride to King's Landing and confront Robert myself. He must know of this treachery.
Are you certain that is the wisest course of action? There have been troubling rumors in the south. You will be at risk.
I will only be there a short time. It is not as if I plan to accept Robert's offer. Robb shall rule the north in my stead. Advise him well.
Taking only a handful of guards and the dagger in question, Ned finds a ship to take him south to King's Landing. The journey south is long and cold, giving Ned too much time to think. By the time he reaches the keep, he is certain of one thing. The Lannisters are behind this. Ned can feel something in his gut, telling him it's true. When he arrives in the Red Keep, Ned is greeted by Renly, who thanks him, as his refusal leads the youngest Baratheon being named Hand of the King. But they have no time for pleasantries, as Ned insists on speaking to Robert immediately. Seeing how serious the Warden of the North is, Renly takes him directly to Robert's quarters. The king is surprised to see him, but welcomes him, at first joking he didn't expect Ned to visit so soon. But his good humor fades when he hears Ned's story. He watches as Ned produces the dagger in question, and Robert's face darkens.
We must find the owner of this dagger. It may lead me to the man who tried to murder my son. I know who owns that dagger, but it won't lead you to the murderer. It's mine.
Yours?
I won it during a wager on my son's last name day, but someone stole it before we left Winterfell. I was looking all over for it. Give it here. This is the weapon of kings, not some cutthroat's toy. Don't worry. I will get to the bottom of this.
Renly suggests they gather all the courtiers who accompanied Robert up north. He deduces that it must have been someone important who was close to the king to steal it. Robert agrees and provides a list of names of everyone who came north with him. They're all gathered in the throne room where Robert lounges on the Iron Throne, glaring down at them. He twirls the dagger along the arm of the Iron Throne. He announces that one of them stole this dagger, and he will not allow anyone to leave until he learns who. For a few tense minutes, the court falls silent as no one dares speak. The only sound comes from the shuffle of nervous feet and the murmuring of the courtiers. Then, to everyone's shock, Joffrey steps forward. The boy looks pale, but defiant, his lip curling into a sneer.
I took it.
Robert's fury is immediate. He leaps off the chair and lumbers forward, grabbing Joffrey by the collar.
You? By the Seven, how could you do something like that? Why? Did you try to kill a boy?
I only did what you said. You said it yourself. It might have been mercy if the boy had died.
The words strike like a blow, and for a moment the hall is deathly quiet. Robert's grip loosens, and his face twists with something between guilt and fury. He turns slowly, his eyes meeting Ned Stark's. The shame in Robert's expression is unmistakable, and he struggles to hold Ned's piercing gaze.
I said no such thing. Not like this.
And yet, here we are, Robert. Your son admits to stealing your blade and trying to murder my boy. Whatever you meant by your words, this was the result.
Enough! Everyone out! Now!
The courtiers scatter like leaves in the wind, the heavy doors slamming shut behind them. Only Renly and Ned remain, both standing tense and watchful. As the chamber clears, Robert wheels on Joffrey. Without warning, he strikes the boy across the face. Joffrey stumbles, clutching his cheek, his defiance crumbling into tears.
You little fool! Do you even understand what you've done? Do you think this is some game? You've shamed yourself, shamed me, shamed this entire bloody house. If it were anyone else you've tried this stunt on, I would have a rebellion on my hands.
I did it for you. You said...
You think I wanted this? That I wanted the blood of a child on our house? You're a fool, boy. A bloody goddamn fool.
Before he can say more, the doors burst open, and Cersei strides into the chamber, her green eyes blazing.
Enough, Robert. You've made your point. He is your son. You will not strike him again.
My son. That is my great shame. To think the blood of the Baratheons flows in that craven's veins. But I'll not have a child murderer as my heir. Do you hear me, woman? I have half a mind to take his head off.
You will do no such thing. Do you think you can cast him aside like one of your common bastards? Do you think Tywin Lannister will stand for this? Do you think I will? Try it, Robert. Just try to stop me. Come, my son. You don't need to endure this barbarity any longer.
Joffrey hesitates, casting a glance back at his father, but Cersei's grip tightens, and he follows her without another word. The doors close behind them with a heavy thud, leaving Robert standing in silence. For a moment, he looks as though he might smash the table in half, but instead he sinks into his chair, his head in his hands.
Ned, well, you heard. You must know I didn't. That's not what I
do not appreciate my son being treated like some lamed horse, Robert. But I know that you did not mean it like that. What will you do?
I don't know.
He mutters, his voice heavy with despair.
The boy's a monster, Ned. And he's mine. Gods help me. He's mine.
There is much debate on what is to be done about Joffrey between the three men. Robert did not make an idle threat when he said he would have executed Joffrey. Seeing the disgust in Ned's eyes fuels that even further. He sees it almost as a way to make amends for it. But thankfully, Ned does not require any bloodshed like that. After the sight of Rhaegar's children being murdered, he insists no more blood shall be spilled in these halls. One thing that Robert is clear on, though, is that he does not wish Joffrey to succeed him. While he's always known Joffrey to be temperamental, something like this truly horrifies him, and he cannot bear the thought of the prince sitting on the Iron Throne. Renly suggests exiling him to some lord who might wish to ward him, warning that it would look unkingly if he exiled his son. But Ned counters that nothing will stop Joffrey from simply hurting more people. Finally, they come to a solution. One none of them like, but one they can accept. Joffrey will be sent to the Wall. But as these plans are finalized, Renly returns to the Tower of the Hand, where Cersei is waiting for him.
Your Grace, what brings you to my chambers at this hour?
The king is a fool. You see that as clearly as I do, don't you? Robert spends his days drinking himself to an early grave, his nights brawling and whoring. Is this the man you wish to see on the Iron Throne, as the realm falls apart around him?
He is my brother.
And what will happen when his recklessness destroys us all? You heard him today, striking his son, threatening exile. We have the Mad King come again.
Robert is no Ares, Your Grace. Besides, the matter has been decided. I won't betray him, no matter what faults he may have.
You won't betray him, but what of Joffrey? He is your kin too, isn't he? Your blood, a Baratheon as much as Robert.
The difference is that I happen to like Robert.
But what do you have to gain from that fondness? If you stand with me when I declare Robert is unfit to rule, it will give my claim merit.
Support you in what? A coup? An arrest? Do you think I'll stand by while you depose my brother?
It took Robert 15 years to name one of his own as Hand of the King. But back Joffrey now, and within a month you can be more. Regent, the Lord Protector. What kind of king could Joffrey become with the right guidance? Your guidance.
The next day, chaos erupts in the Red Keep. Courtiers scatter as Robert calls for Joffrey to be brought forward to face his judgment. But when his guards move to retrieve him, they return empty-handed, saying that he's not in his quarters, the training yard, or anywhere in the Red Keep. The king immediately knows that Cersei is responsible, and the queen appears, dignified and smug, as she claims that Joffrey is now out of his reach, as she sends him off in the dead of night, accompanied by Jaime Lannister, to escort him to Castle Rock. To his surprise, Renly steps forward and clears his throat.
Please, brother, see reason. Sending him to the Wall would only divide the realm further. The lords would see it as weakness, or worse, madness.
Reason? You defied me. You dared to act behind my back in my court. Did Cersei put you up to this madness? He tried to murder a child in his bed. That boy is worse than a fool. He's a savage.
A savage with Lannister blood. If you try this, the Lannisters will rise in rebellion. The realm will bleed. Please, you looked the other way the last time a Lannister brought you the body of a babe.
I should have your head for that. Do you presume to lecture me on choices? You know nothing of ruling.
And you do? While you whore and hunt and feast and fight, it is the small council who has kept the realm together, and we have decided that the king is no longer fit to rule.
But as the king's guard moves, the sound of marching feet echoes in the corridor. Cersei and Renly's men pour into the chamber, armored and armed, their faces grim with determination. The king's guard hesitate, glancing at one another.
The king is tired. See to it that he is taken to his quarters so he may rest.
Half of them, Sir Boris Blount, Sir Meryn Trant, and Sir Preston Greenfield, step forward to stand with the Queen's forces. The others, Sir Barristan Selmy, Sir Aerys Oakhart, and Sir Mandon Moore, draw their swords and place themselves between the intruders and their king. Ned draws his sword alongside Robert's household guard.
It's over, Robert. Lay down your crown and you can live out your days in peace. Resist, and there will be blood.
You think a little blood frightens me?
Then, like a spark igniting dry tinder, the first blade strikes. A Lannister guard lunges at Robert, but Sir Barristan intercepts him, cutting the man down with a swift stroke. He catches the sword in midair and tosses it to Robert as chaos erupts and the room becomes a battlefield. Ned fights his way to Robert's side, his longsword flashing as he cuts down a Lannister soldier who lunges at the king. Their guards form a tight circle around them as they battle through the Lannister forces. They are outnumbered almost 3-1, but the Lannisters lack Sir Barristan. The old knight leads the way, his sword a blur as he carves through the enemy ranks. Sir Aerys and Sir Mandon guard the rear, their shields battered but holding firm. Despite their skill, the odds are against them. They are badly outnumbered, and for every guard they fell, 2 more take his place. Renly shouts for the fighting to stop, but his voice is lost in the clamor of steel and screams. Ned's men fall 1 by 1, buying precious seconds for their lord and the king to escape. The council chamber becomes a slaughterhouse, the once pristine marble floor slick with blood. Finally, battered and bloodied, they reach the doors and flee into the winding corridors of the Red Keep. But as the portcullis begins to close, the King's Guard manages to find horses and lead them galloping out just as the gate slams shut behind them. When they reach the docks, Robert orders one of the galleys to take them to Dragonstone, leaving King's Landing in Lannister hands. As the ships cut through the Blackwaters, Robert stands at the prow, gripping it until his knuckles turn white. When they arrive at Dragonstone, Stannis greets them coolly but courteously, inviting them to discuss everything in the Painted Table. As Robert and Ned recount the events at King's Landing, the coup, Joffrey's disappearance, and the Lannisters' treachery, Stannis listens in stony silence, his expression unreadable.
You've made quite the mess, brother. You were fools, both of you. Did you trust the Lannisters? After all these years, after all the signs, you were blind, Robert. Too gentle with the boy when he showed his true nature.
You think I don't know that? One brother wants me to spare the boy, the other would have me kill him outright. What would you have me do, Stannis? He's my son.
You still haven't figured it out then, have you? He is no son of yours.
What did you say?
Joffrey is no son of yours, Robert. Nor are the others. Jon Arryn and I suspected as much for years. Why do you think Jon kept muttering the seed is strong? He found proof before his death. The boy's the product of incest. Cersei and Jaime. The Kingslayer fathered those children.
You have proof of this?
Nothing too solid. Me and Jon had documents. The hair of the bastards you fathered with women across the realm. Dark-haired, like you. And then there's Joffrey, golden-haired like his mother's family. But before we could investigate it further,
Jon Arryn died.
Not died. Murdered by the Lannisters, I suspect. No doubt meant to cover their tracks.
Blind. How can I not see it?
All those years. There's no time for lamentations. Tywin Lannister has mobilized an army, nearly 30,000 strong. He marches to bring Joffrey back to King's Landing while Renly gathers his host from the Stormlands. And Robb Stark is moving south with his army. This is no mere coup any longer. This is war.
I've instructed Robb not to engage Tywin's forces. He's young but wise enough to listen.
I'll gather what forces remain to me. Few they are. I believe I can also get loyalty of House Faring, Kittering, and Massey. Leave the Crownlands to me. I'll denounce Joffrey as my heir and tell them the truth.
He's not my son. I'll raise my banners.
And they'll rally to me.
Robert sets out riding through the Crownlands with his ragged band of loyalists. Ned Stark remains at his side, and they visit each house personally, talking to their lords and ladies, sharing supper and exchanging stories. Many of them are concerned about the war, some fearing for their lands and families, forcing Robert to step up as king. Though his years as a warrior are behind him, his charisma and fiery spirit remain. Each time he talks to them, he doesn't just bring revelations about Joffrey's parentage, but assurances. He promises that he will deal with Tywin Lannister and that he will not set one foot in the Crownlands. With passion and energy that many thought died long ago, he begins to win the houses over. Soon, along with the Kitterings, Masseys, and Farings, Robert's armies also gained houses like Stokeworths, Rosbys, and Rikers. Though King's Landing remains out of reach, Cersei lacks the army to challenge him. Instead, Robert takes his forces west to confront Tywin, who continues his rampage against the Riverlands. As they travel, Robert can't help but feel the familiar feelings of his days during the rebellion. Part of him is thrilled with it, but even these positive memories are drowned out by the shadow hanging over him, as he knows he's responsible for the rebellion. Though Tywin might be leading the armies, this all happened because of his neglect. Tywin's armies sweeps through the Riverlands, burning villages and forcing houses to yield, allowing him to take most of the houses west of the Trident. The Eastern Lords, fearful of Lannister reprisal, begin to rally to Robert's side. The two forces meet in a series of bloody, inconclusive battles. Robert's forces fight with desperate ferocity, denying the Lannisters a place where they can cross the Trident. But Tywin's forces are larger and better supplied. It seems only a matter of time before the Lannisters break through. It doesn't help that Robert struggles to keep up. Though he wishes to lead his troops in battle, the king tires easily and struggles to fight. He sees some success as he manages to defeat Sir Boros Blunt, and many praise it as defeating a treacherous Kingsguard. Robert knows that it was hardly a feat to defeat him. As the game of cat and mouse continues, Ned sends word to Robb to try and attack Tywin's rear by freeing Riverrun, which can put some pressure on him. However, Tywin retaliates by unleashing his raiders behind Lannister lines, while continuing his probes onto the Trident. Meanwhile, Renly's army begins rushing up the Kingswood to reinforce King's Landing. After almost a week of fighting, Tywin at last forces a crossing over the river, threatening to flank Robert's forces and drive them back. Ned gathers their forces and tries to rally the men in the falling fjord. He stabilizes the lines, but the Mountain and his men manage to secure a foothold. Despite unleashing knights and archers upon them, Ned cannot dislodge them, and Tywin's force begins to reinforce them. Robert and the reinforcements from Stannis rush to help them. Robert's presence helps rally the men, especially as he plunges into the field, hammer in hand. But while brave, the king struggles to hold his own against younger and more experienced knights. Many begin to urge Robert to retreat, taking whatever forces remain and retreating back to the Crownlands. But he refuses, opting to die on the field if it comes to that. But to everyone's surprise, they hear horns coming from the north. Several scouts report that they see Stark and Tully banners flying in the distance as a smaller force, about 6,000, comes galloping towards them. Robb's army slams into the Lannisters' forces waiting to cross the fjords, and instead break and run, leaving their comrades trapped on the eastern bank. Soon chaos spreads, as despite Tywin's efforts to rally his men, the panic spreads and he is forced to retreat with the remnants of his forces. Robb and Robert meet on the battlefield, their armies bloodied but victorious.
I thought I told you to liberate Riverrun.
I did. I left a force to try breaking the siege while I took the cavalry to ride to your aid. The Lannisters didn't suspect a thing.
You've got good instincts. You've got the makings of a king.
But the war is far from over. In King's Landing, Cersei consolidates her power while Renly is rallying his forces. But with Stannis' fleet blocking off Blackwater Bay and Tywin taking flight, Robert rides hard back to the city. Robb and Ned pursue Tywin's defeated army while Robert rides his forces to King's Landing. If Cersei was hoping for a siege, she was sadly mistaken. Though she tried to buy their loyalty, many Gold Cloaks feel no affection to her, and rather than risk the wrath of the king, open the gates to him. The queen is soon captured and imprisoned, while their children are detained. Seeing how badly the war is going, Renly's armies begin to mutiny, refusing to turn against their king. Rather than risk battle, the youngest Baratheon flees across the Narrow Sea with most of his loyal supporters. This leaves Robert atop the Iron Throne, but with Joffrey and Tywin still around, the war is far from over. Please like the video. A part 2 will be made at 2,500 likes. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.